Disclaimer. This video contains spoilers for both the original Death Note anime as well as the 2017 Netflix remake. Not that you would care if the movie was spoiled for you. Anyway, I have a new Twitter. I'll leave the link in the description, but if you guys want to go there and follow me so you get updates whenever I, am making new videos or whenever a new video gets released, for example, then you can go follow that. Twitter.com/ I forgot my @name. I'll put it on the screen right now. But yeah. Netflix's 2017 Death Note adaptation needs no introduction. It's really been done to death already. We all remember it. The trailer oh my god, I cannot read. We all remember it. The trailer We all remember it. The trailer released. Everyone thought to themselves, this is going to be terrible. And it was terrible. So terrible, in fact, that it started the whole Netflix anime adaptation meme. People hated it so much that they harassed the director Adam Wingard into deleting his Twitter account. Stuff was going down. Before I wrote this script, I hadn't actually seen it. Needless to say, I was a little late to the party, but fear not, because Netflix has announced that a new Death Note series is coming soon, directed by none other than the brothers who made Stranger Things. Remember those guys? Really seems like Netflix is shilling out the big bucks for all the cool IPs these days. What's the deal with that? So, to commemorate the announcement of the new series releasing on Netflix, I decided to revisit the movie and see, has it stood the test of time? Also, we're not going to talk about how I put revisiting in the title, yet I only watched the Death Note anime this year. It's my channel, I can do what I want. There are a lot of things wrong with this movie. I really don't want to bore you guys with redundancy of stuff you've already heard talked about, so I'll try to keep it simple. This movie just flat out does not understand its characters, like at all. The problem of terrible characterization is so bad that while watching it with my friend, we constantly made the joke that the writers probably didn't even watch the anime. They were just given a basic summary of what Death Note is and just went from there. I feel like if the writers did actually watch Death Note, then they somehow willfully ignored the amazingly written and interesting characters and converted them into soulless cliches from every high school drama ever made. Now let's actually dive into the plot. The movie begins with these weird High School Musical tier shots, and then we see Light outside, doing other people's homework? For some odd reason, this movie expects us to believe that while simultaneously being smart enough to literally plan out the entire ending of the movie, this version of Light also decided it was a good idea to do homework for jocks to make a quick buck. From this intro alone, I think it's pretty easy to tell that for whatever reason, the people who were making this movie wanted to turn the story of Death Note into a cheesy American high school drama romance thing. The notebook drops from the sky, Light picks it up and puts it into his bag, and it starts raining and everyone flees. Seattle, am I right? Light then sees Mia try to stop these guys from bullying this nerd and runs in front of her to act cool or something. We're not even 3 minutes in and they've already messed up Light's personality astronomically. If this were the Death Note series and Light saw this, he would just keep walking. In the anime, Light was bored with his life in general, as he was doing great in school and already super popular. Netflix Light shows none of this. I mean, he really doesn't seem to be that smart at all. Light tries to act cool and taunt the bullies, and then promptly gets punched in the face. We then cut to the most unconcerned principal ever, and this guy does not care that Light was just assaulted by a bunch of and is more concerned about the fact that he was doing other people's homework. What can I say, he's got his priorities straight. We cut to more shots of Light and Mia making eye contact to very subtly clue in the viewer how these two will be together in the future. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, in its ruthless Americanization, this movie changed Misa's name to Mia, and for the remainder of this video, I'll be referring to her as Mia because it's way less confusing. Anyways, Light is now in detention, with no one else at all in a large Seattle high school. This whole scene in the movie really just serves as an exposition dump of how the Death Note works, and although Light is shown reading the Death Note's rules later in the movie, for some reason Ryuk needs to tell Light what they are out loud. I also forgot to mention, Light is a total coward in this movie. Movie Light curls up and cries like a baby upon the arrival of Ryuk, which I'm not sure how to feel about. Ryuk then convinces Light to kill the bully that punched him using the Death Note, Which first of all is all kinds of wrong, considering Light didn't really need motivation to kill in the series. He was literally just bored. And second of all, this death scene is just needlessly gory for the Death Note and makes zero sense. I guess this is supposed to emphasize us that the Death Note can make people die in any way. Well, except
shark attacks while someone's on the toilet.
One of the things I found funniest about this movie is the fact that they presented us with some monumental levels of bullshit death, yet expected us to see getting eaten by a shark while on the toilet as more wild and crazy than this.
Thank you.
Light now knows how to use the Death Note. He goes home, has an argument with his dad, and holy cow, his mom's dead. Yes, if you had not seen this movie already, the writers came to the amazing conclusion that killing off Light's mom would be a good way to motivate him to becoming Kira, which I honestly hate. You see, one of the more glaring problems with this movie is that it just does not want Light to be an anti-hero, like, at all. So much so that the writers retconned the source material in order to give the main character a sob story so he has motivation to use the Death Note for good. I'm sure you can tell where the rest of this film is headed. Light talks to Ryuk some more, and Ryuk does more of his trademark Ryuk audience exposition. Honestly, the only thing I really enjoyed at all from this movie was Ryuk, because he's voiced by Willem Dafoe. You can tell he's really trying, which I admire, but his voice acting talent doesn't save the movie, sadly. Ryuk once again convinces Light to kill someone, this time the cliche cartoon gangster guy that did his mom in. He writes his name in the Death Note, and he stabs himself with a fork, I think? I'm genuinely not sure what's happening here, if I'm being honest. After a long night of Death Noting, Light is asleep on his desk, with a note in full view of his prying father who opens the door and asks him what he's doing. This is one of the many clues in this movie that Light is nothing like his anime counterpart. He isn't cold and calculating, he doesn't plan everything out, he doesn't even so much as try to hide the Death Note in his whole movie, if you don't count his backpack. I really do not understand how it is possible to miss the mark on a character this badly. It's honestly amazing. As if having the note on his desk in full view of his father wasn't enough, Light is now reading the note in gym class, somehow expecting no one to come ask him what it is. Mia sits next to him, and instead of trying in any way to throw Mia off his trail, Light almost immediately shows her the Death Note and explains to her what it does? Here's another one of this movie's huge curveballs. In this version of Death Note, only the keeper of the note can see Ryuk, not anyone who touches it like the anime. I don't really understand why this change was made, honestly. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. Now that Light and Mia are Death Note partner buddies, we get to see a cringy montage of them, kissing while writing names in the Death Note? Someone approved this script. Someone saw this and was like, yeah, this'll work. In this movie, Light and Mia's whole dynamic is just messed up. Instead of the nuanced manipulator versus manipulatee relationship we had in the anime, where Light only kept Misa around because he could use her, and Misa stayed around because of her love for Light first as a figure and then as a person, the movie gives us this cliche as hell high school relationship bull. I don't think anyone ever, except the writers of this movie, saw Death Note and thought, you know that this would make a good coming of age romance drama? Another thing I want to point out in this scene is how absurd Light and Mia's killings are. Here we see a literal train-on-train collision, and the next scene we see a church collapsing. There's gotta be some civilian collateral damage or something, right? Anyway, now we're introduced to L. Now my hot take about this movie is I really don't think Lakeith Stanfield did that bad of a job portraying L. I just think he was bound by the movie's writing, and good acting can only go so far. A huge problem that this movie suffers from is that the cat and mouse game between L and Light from the anime is almost completely missing. It's more like L does some semi-detective-y stuff, then Light does some more stuff, and the cycle continues. None of it is interesting, like, at all. This film failed miserably at being a cool detective film crossed with American high school drama like it wanted to be, and really just comes off as a half-assed attempt to adapt a series for a frankly uninterested American audience. Light is once again loudly watching news about Kira on the huge flat-screen TV in his room. He gets a call from Mia and realizes that L is actually calling him out. Now the huge problem I have with this scene is that it just makes no sense the way it's presented. Apparently, whoever wrote L's character in this movie was just like, nah, F it, get rid of the whole super secretive not wanting to show his face part, just slap a mask on him and call it a day. The whole point of the scene in the anime was to show the audience and L that Kira cannot kill without a whole face. So does this mean half a face doesn't count? 1/3? The logic this movie is running off of is absurd. Light and Mia go on the Ferris wheel and decide what to do about the FBI agents who are trailing them, and Mia suggests they just kill all of the agents with the note. Now, being the smart person he is, Light tells her that this would be a dumb idea. Ryuk writes their names in anyway, and we are treated to this amazingly stupid eye candy of 12 men walking off the top of a building in slow motion. Why the writers couldn't just have had all of them have heart attacks, I have no idea. This also brings into question how, for the film, some of the rules of the Death Note were changed. Later in the film, it's revealed that instead of Ryuk being behind the deaths of the agents, it was actually Mia, forcing the one agent whose name they know to write the names of the remaining agents in the note itself, forcing them all to die at once. So in this universe, can others besides the Keeper write in the Death Note and use it but can't see Ryuk? Is there a limit on how many people we can influence with it? Or could you just get one person to write other people's names with the action of writing more people's names before they die, and so on and so on? I really think I should just stop trying to understand the rules of this movie's universe. We are then treated to an amazing scene of Light, in all his amazing intellect, screaming about the note through his high school corridors. I genuinely don't know what the writers were thinking putting this in. I have no words. Ryuk threatens Light some more, which I really just don't understand. I don't see what the point of changing Ryuk's entire dynamic was. Ryuk was supposed to be an overseer almost, but not actually interfere with Light's doings. Here he's almost like a puppet master, manipulating Light into continuing to use the Death Note to kill for some reason. It's never really explained why Ryuk manipulates Light or what his motivations are. It's an extremely contrived attempt at making Ryuk seem like this mysterious unknown character. So originally I was going to skip over this part, but I felt like it was worth mentioning. Light's dad shows up on the news, and Mia suggested it would be a good idea to kill him with the Death Note. Now the reason I brought this point up is because I want to talk about Light and Mia's respective characters and dynamic a bit more. Light is naive, foolish, and an idiot with the note this entire film. Mia, on the other hand, is, well, I wouldn't say smart, but has more sense than Light does. She's psychopathic at points, manipulative, and doesn't have Light's best interests in mind, only her own. If you haven't realized yet, in this movie, Light and Misa's personalities were switched for the most part, with Mia being portrayed as sort of an anti-hero and even villain at times, and Light as the oblivious, impulsive hero. Switching these characters really does not work, and if anything, it's a sneak peek of what would happen if someone who wasn't nearly as smart as Light got hold of the Death Note. Now, this next section of the film is primarily composed of the filmmakers trying and failing to recreate the cat and mouse game that Light and L had going on in the anime series. They meet in a coffee shop, and by this point L knows that Light is Kira, but for some reason he lets him go? Now, because this movie wants to avoid the Shinigami Eyes plot point from the anime, as it would completely destroy Light and Mia's already established dynamic, we see Light and Mia controlling Watari using the Death Note in order to find out L's real name. This detail becomes really important later. Light and Mia are over at Light's house, and Mia meets Light's dad when L shows up and begins to accuse Light of being Kira. Light's dad then tackles L, which I find a little strange because at points in the movie, Light and his father's relationship had been a little strained. Light's dad was never shown to be this super loving father figure. He was just a distant dad who sometimes made attempts to get closer to Light. After Light's dad assaults an FBI asset and faces no consequences for it, we see the police scouring the Turner's house and taking everything for evidence. Now my real question here is, why did they not find the Death Note when we were never shown any proof that Light actually hid it in any secure way? We continue to watch Watari under the control of the Death Note as we move on to the next scene, the ill-fated prom scene. If you needed any more proof that the writers wanted to turn the story of Death Note into a high school drama, they literally play Take My Breath Away and have Light and Mia stare at each other in slow motion. Watari is searching through the old orphanage that L used to live in to find his real name, and relaying his findings back to Light, who very inconspicuously gave his hat to some other kid and dipped out of the dance. Light then realizes that Mia took a page from the Death Note earlier in the film and that it was actually her who used the Death Note to kill the FBI agents, not Ryuk. Light gets mad at her for this, and then runs to the computer lab for a reason that will be relevant later. After getting a text from Mia that the police are onto him and are after him now, he texts her back and tells her to go to the Ferris wheel on foot. After a very long drawn-out chase sequence, L corners Light in an alleyway and then gets knocked out by some random fry cook after telling him the Light is Kira. Light and Mia make it to the Ferris wheel somehow, and Light does the age-old cliche of shooting an object to make it work. Now, at the top of the Ferris wheel, Light and Mia have a huge emotional argument, and Light realizes that Mia has been manipulating him the whole time in order to gain control of the Death Note for herself. Light understandably gets mad, and then the Ferris wheel begins to collapse, leaving Light hanging on for dear life and Mia holding on to him. She inevitably lets go, lands her to her death on a flower cart, and Light lands in the water, fate uncertain. Elle watches the Death Note page that Mia wrote Light's name on for his eventual death land into a nearby fire, which brings up a large plot point of this movie that I forgot to mention until now. In this movie's universe, if a Death Note page with someone's name on it is burned, then it essentially cancels their death. Is there a time limit between the person's death and the writing of the name when you can burn it? Does anything happen if you burn it after the death? The fact that these questions exist really shows how dumb this detail was to add into the movie. Light is in the hospital, and after waking up from a coma, explains to his dad how he basically planned the entire movie's events from the start. He planned that he and Mia would fall from the Ferris wheel, that he'd be rescued and resuscitated while also being kept in a medically induced coma for 2 days. He also planned that another criminal would find the Death Note, use it to kill criminals from the nightly news for the 2 days Light is in a coma, then return it to him. It is also revealed during this scene that Light planned Mia's death as well, and that he somehow knew that Mia wrote his name in the note and then acted like he was surprised. After Light's monologue to his father, movie ends and credits roll. My biggest problem with this ending is how astronomically much the movie expects us to suspend our disbelief, to believe that Light had the capacity to plan all of these events out from the beginning, while simultaneously acting like a complete idiot the entire time. It's simply just lazy writing. What the writers intended to come off as a huge plot twist ends up just being a disappointing letdown of an ending to an already bad film. I think the biggest problem with this entire movie comes from its foundation as a whole. Where the movie messed up was trying to recreate Death Note as it is instead of just making a whole new story in its universe. No matter how they did it, diehard fans were always going to be mad at a live-action adaptation of Death Note. What I feel would have been more successful and entertaining, however, is if this movie was a spin-off of the Death Note series, with these characters having different names. I mean, come on, if the whole element of remaking the anime series was removed, the story isn't that terrible. It's just bad because it ignores pre-established elements that made the original series so good. Turn these characters into brand new ones, however, and although cliche, it wouldn't be the worst thing I've ever seen. I mean, think about it. A Death Note spin-off that shows what would happen if some American teenagers got a hold of the Death Note would be super cool, right? And I think that's really what this movie was trying to do. It was just held back by trying to recreate what's so good about the original anime series, and also make necessary changes for first-time viewers who had never seen the source material. If I'm being completely honest, I wouldn't recommend any of you go and watch this film. I really only watched it because I'd been watching a lot of really great movies at the time, and I wanted to cleanse my palate. After watching this movie, I really just felt like I had wasted an hour and a half, and that really isn't a feeling you want to feel after watching any film. So yes, I'd say Death Note 2017 was really that bad. Now we wait for the upcoming Netflix series. Comment if you want me to review that when it comes out. Well, if you made it this far into the video, then you get a pat on the back and a cookie. I worked insanely hard on this video, probably the most effort I put into a video on my channel before, so if you could like the video and share it with your friends, that would be greatly appreciated. If you enjoyed this video and want to see me do more movie or game reviews, comment below. By the way, thank you guys so much for 500 subscribers. It means so much to me that you guys enjoy my content. I love making it and I can't wait to get more of it out there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day or night. Peace.
Done. Now let's see how it looks so far. The